Welcome back, everyone, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show, the home of Googlization Nation, where we talk with HR and business thought leaders about the crazy shift going on in the world of business, technology, and HR. Here's your host, Ira Wolfe.
Welcome back, Googlization Nation, to another episode of Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. I'm Ira Wolfe, and I'm here with my co-host, Jason Cochran. Welcome.
Good to see you again, Ira. Excited to be with Googlization Nation today. Exciting topic around innovation.
Another never normal week, right?
Absolutely. Blur's Day, as you often call it.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. What a crazy week. We've got a great guest today. I met Ben just a few months ago, reached out. He had a new book called Built to Innovate. But the reason I was really excited to meet him, he works with an organization, a university called Insead. For those familiar with Blue Ocean Strategy, Blue Ocean Shift, they're the home of that. Which really looks at business strategy, how to find those new opportunities, create value, add new value. Ben, I was teaching my class in organizational change, and the book came. And when I saw that where he was actually, he'll have to give it the proper name, but it was, I think, Dean of Business Education there for 2 years, but he's a professor there. And so I was so excited that he spoke at he was a guest lecturer for one of my classes because we use the Blue Ocean Strategy. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but his book is not about Blue Ocean Strategy. It really fits into what we talked about last week with Chad, and so very often it is that we talk about innovation all the time. And last week with Chad, we were talking about HR tech. And so many times companies reach for the technology. We're going to innovate. We're going to bring in new technology. We're going to automate this process. We're going to use robotic. And he draws a distinct difference between innovation and innovating.
Oh, that's intriguing.
Yeah, so it's going to be fun. This is going to be a lot of fun. So I can't wait to get to him. But before then, you and I are going to be talking about how do we get people to think this way? How do we get people to think differently? We've got a webinar tomorrow. We've got a great attendance. There is still some room. There is a limited amount of seats available, virtual seats available. But if you sign up and for some reason you can't get in or the time doesn't work out, it will be recorded so you can follow that. But we're talking about how to reimagine your future tomorrow. And we're going to talk about adaptability, the adaptability quotient. And we are ultimately going to be talking about how you can reshape your organization. How do you create this culture, which it works so well with what Ben's going to talk about, is how do you create a culture of continuous innovation, which means that you're going to continually have to adapt, continually have to change. So what are the factors? What are the dimensions in there? When I programmed both of these, when we put both of these on the calendar, I had no idea that there was going to be so much synergy between these two conversations.
Perfect for those two to button up against each other. And, I've got to admit, working in a technology company, when I hear about innovation, sadly, I often think in terms of technology companies, like you were alluding to. But I think what we hear from Ben today is innovation is a critical skill that's needed for every business, regardless of where you find yourselves. And it was fascinating to me in preparing for today. Found a McKinsey study that came out last year. Was on innovation. And what they found is that companies who invest in innovation as one of their 2 strategic priorities during a crisis outperform their peers in the recovery phase following the crisis by 30% on average. So it's not just essential to innovate to survive, it's essential to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to take too much time away from Ben, but I was looking at some topics, and it came to me just this morning for the Never Normal News, which people can get to through LinkedIn if you're connected with me through LinkedIn. But when we talk about normal, and I'll be interested to hear what Ben's kind of feelings about this or what his perspective is, that everybody still wants to go back to normal. I've done 2 SHRM meetings in the last 2 days, and I ask, what's your definition of normal? And everybody goes, oh, it's calm and serene and routine and nice. And I mean, it was all this fluffy stuff, but we're not going back there. But you've heard me say this before, when we talk about going back to normal, it just hit me this morning. If we go back to what was normal in 1950, in 1960, normal, Jeff Foxworthy, I'm a big fan of his, if you are, what does he say? You might be a. So
Yep.
When you go back to here, you might be a racist, you might be and we won't go down that path, but just some things that people we forgot. I mean, baby boomers didn't forget, or maybe some baby boomers did, but other people didn't remember this. If you were a woman in the 1950s, or earlier, you couldn't open a bank account without your husband or a male relative's approval. You couldn't get a credit card. You couldn't serve on jury duty in every state. You couldn't practice law in all 50 states. You could be arrested for breastfeeding in public. You couldn't attend a military academy. You couldn't go to an Ivy League school. You couldn't take birth control without your husband's permission. You couldn't refuse sex with your husband. You just couldn't refuse sex with your husband. You couldn't go on maternity leave or keep your job if you were pregnant. I remember some of those days. Wow. And I act like a geek, but I'm the geezer in the room. So there's all these things we forget about, but also people of color. You couldn't. We're kind of reverting back to that. Maybe couldn't vote, couldn't attend the same schools as white kids, couldn't stay at the same hotel, couldn't go to a restaurant, had to sit in the back of the bus. That was all in our lifetime. That until the 1960s was normal. Is that the normal we're going to go back to? And everybody wants to cherry pick. Oh, no. I wouldn't want to go back for that. Well, that's not how life works. We can't cherry pick. We can't roll the clock back to 1950 for some things. And then other things, oh, no, we want to keep them the same. We've got a lot of work to do. And so all of this fits into this concept of creating a culture of moving forward, growth, success, continuous innovation. And we're really excited to have all the way from Japan, and just for all our U.S. listeners, or even our European listeners, it is 3 a.m., or now it's actually 3:07 a.m. or 3:08 a.m. In the morning for Ben Bensaou, who is joining us, and he's wide awake. We talked to him before, so welcome, Ben.
Yes, good afternoon, Ira. Good afternoon, Jason. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm fully awake, and I hope you'll keep me awake.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So I'm just going to read
to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a pleasure, and especially you getting up that early. I've tried that a couple times, and it's not always easy. You're currently you have a role, in addition to your book, Built to Innovate, which we'll be talking about a lot, professor of technology management and professor of Asian business and comparative management at Insead. Long title. I don't know how you get that on your door or your business card, but that's an awful long title. And for those who aren't familiar with Insead, I think I represented it correctly, that it's really the home of blue ocean strategy. Is that?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So for those who don't maybe know Insead, Insead is the business school of the world. It's a global business school with campuses in, the main campus is in France, Fontainebleau, in Singapore, Abu Dhabi, and we opened a research hub in San Francisco a couple of years ago. And what we do is we're independent, and we do mostly degree programs like MBA, executive MBAs, and a lot of executive education. And what we teach, what we coach people in, actually comes from the research that the faculty do. And two of our professors, Chang Kim and Renee Moborn, were the ones who started actually working on innovation. And first it was called Value Innovation in 1998 when I started to work with them. And then they published the book, Blue Ocean Strategy, and later Blue Ocean Shift. And yes, Blue Ocean Insead is the home of Blue Ocean Strategy. Absolutely, yeah.
And I think you were dean. Were you dean of the school or
Yes.
business education
No,
for
absolutely, yes. So I said we have two kind of big kind of sources of revenue: a degree program, MBA, executive MBA, and we do a lot of executive education. That's about half of the revenues of the school, and I was dean of executive education. Absolutely, yeah.
Excellent. Good. So I just want to make that right. And obviously you got the credentials to be here. So, and we're going to share some of that knowledge. So let's talk a little bit about, and note your book is not about blue ocean strategy, but I think it's a really important, it's really important. And it seems to resonate when we talk about the blue ocean and, the alternative is the red ocean. So if you can give us a real concise, summary, an explanation of what that might mean. And again, many of our audience or most of our audience is going to be HR recruiters, business leaders, and certainly our focus is how can companies recruit and retain people. So again, we need to really innovate HR.
Right.
But everybody seems to be swimming in this red ocean looking for talent.
Right.
They're doing the same old stuff over and over again. Let's throw money, or let's throw another benefit, or let's do something, with a little flash. But they're not really changing it. So if you can real briefly talk about how red ocean and blue ocean may fit into this, and then we're going to lead into really go into your book.
Yeah, so there's actually a real affiliation between my book and Blue Ocean Strategy. So I said they started to, Chan and Renee started to publish around the topic in 1998, and I started to actually be involved with them. And the key concept really is about strategy, is how to shift from what used to be taught in strategy was competitive strategy. How do you compete? How do you outperform your competitors in a competitive arena? And basically, they shifted the conversation by saying, instead of trying to outcompete in a red ocean, bloody red ocean, why don't you look for new and create new market spaces? And this is what the Blue Ocean Strategy is about, is how do you create these new markets? And I started to actually teach and do work on Blue Ocean Strategy, and it's really when I started to help companies implement and roll out Blue Ocean Strategy that I discovered that you needed to build an organization to support Blue Ocean Strategy. So the link between my book and Blue Ocean Strategy is that build to innovate is what it means. It's about building I call it the innovating engine, which will help yield the Blue Ocean Strategy.
So let's draw out some of those differences. And one of the things that struck me, and this was a little bit before you spoke to my class just a few months ago, but definitely in preparation for this and having more opportunity to go through the book. I find it fascinating, and it just hit me, and especially with the conversation we had last week on this show, with Chad Sowash about HR tech. And you probably heard the intro, is that so many companies reach, reach for the shelf, pull it down, and this is going to fix our problems. And that to them is innovation. But you talk about the difference of innovation and innovating.
Yes. Actually, it like many things, many of these ideas, it came completely by accident. So I was telling you, I was teaching early in my career, teaching and coaching and helping companies with innovation. And I had noticed something really strange in the classroom, in the groups, is that I found that the word innovation tends to be very intimidating. When people were sent to these programs, they were called value innovation program, or a Blue Ocean Strategy program, or disruptive innovation. The people who would be facing me would have this anxiety and this fear, and I couldn't understand what was going on. And it came to me after talking to them that what was happening is that they all had the sense that they were expected, when going back to the company after the training, they were expected to come up with a new product or a new service or a new business model. And they expected that they thought that their boss was expecting them to do that. And that creates a lot of anxiety. And then I started to instead use the verb, not the noun innovation, but the verb to innovate, or the adjective to become, let's learn how to become more innovative. And then I felt that the anxiety, the stress was going away. And I really realized quickly that what was happening is that people understood that when you talk about to innovate, you're talking about actions, you're talking about activities, you're talking about a process, you're talking about something that can be learned, that you can support with tools. And it's not about having a special talent to come up with great ideas, but it's about a skill that you can learn. And just to use maybe another metaphor, if you think about innovation or a blue ocean as the tip of the iceberg, the iceberg that you see above the sea level, above the water level, innovating and innovating capabilities is what is under the water level. It's the big part of the iceberg is about these capabilities. Linda Hill at Harvard called it the collective genius. And if you will, Build to Innovate is about how to enlist and leverage the capabilities of everyone in the organization. And that's the big difference between innovation and innovating.
Yeah, I mean well, my head's just racing with ideas as you talk about that, and as you talk about the iceberg, where innovation's the tip of the iceberg and innovating is the underpinning. Is that so many people? It goes back to what we were just talking about with HR tech. People reach for, we're going to have a new ATS, a new HRS. Let's try texting. Let's try chat. Let's try automation. Let's try something else, and they don't want to do the homework. They don't want to build that foundation, and that's about building that. I believe this is correct. You call it the culture of continuous innovation.
Continuous innovation, yes. I mean, this is another thing that I noticed also is that talking to people and teaching and senior executives and frontline people, I discovered that people think that you need a genius leader or to be a startup to innovate. Well, that's not true. In the research I've done, I found established companies, even century-old companies, capable of innovating. Well, what do? They don't kind of obsess about looking for a huge industry-changing effect, but they look for small, very important, and changes which are very often in unexpected places. And this is where they use continuous innovation of all kinds, and driven by everyone in the organization. And I think this is a big difference. This is, I like the word doing your homework. You have to build the capabilities. It's not, you can't simply rely on the genius of your leader or a few, brilliant R&D people. And I always tell people, what if your CEO is not a genius? What do? You have to create innovation or innovating capabilities in spite of the fact that you don't have a genius leader. I think this is very important.
And Ben,
Jason, I see your wheels here. I see the wheels churning there.
Absolutely fascinating, hearing Ben describe this. And I mean, it's so true. And I'm wondering for our listeners, they might be wondering, what are the major obstacles that often come up to developing that continuously innovating culture? You mentioned that you can do it in spite of leadership, like you can still have people taught the skills, but in your research, have you seen maybe one or two things that often trip up organizations in being successful at adapting and developing that innovative culture?
Again, I'm not saying that the leaders don't have a role to play. In fact, I make the argument that to create this capability, this innovating engine, you need everybody. And there's a specific role for senior leaders. Something that I found was surprising to me is the importance of middle management. Without middle management, innovation would not happen. So it's very important to focus on middle management. And then, of course, the ideas come from the front line. So what I talk about is really to take, as I say, take innovation seriously. Take it seriously. And for this, you need to build a concrete, protected, and fully legitimized space within the organization where at least everyone can innovate. Not only your genius leader or your R&D people, but everyone can innovate. People, I've seen brilliant ideas from people at the call center or a receptionist in one project that I've seen. You can innovate in everything you do, not only in your products and your services, but also in your internal processes, in your functions, and more importantly, innovating, as I call it, not innovation, but innovating the process, has to become a habit. And for this, you need to build, as I said, an organization, which means that it has, just like I call the other part of the organization, the execution engine, the innovating engine also needs to have a structure, a governance and coordination structure with specific tasks and roles for some people. It has to be driven by processes, and it has to have its own distinct culture. So this is something really concrete. It's not just saying, let's build the innovating engine. I like the notion of making an investment, taking it seriously, and doing the homework.
Yeah, I just wrote that down, taking innovation seriously. And I think that's such a key, but it's really taking innovating seriously.
Absolutely.
It's not, yeah, I mean, people
Exactly.
people take the innovation seriously because they bought something, but they don't take the innovating seriously. So, I mean, I love that distinction. I want to get into a little bit about execution, the difference of, I mean, innovating and then executing on it, because a lot of organizations really do a great job of coming up with, whether it's an incremental change or a transformational change, they do a good job of that. And then it just falls flat. It just, we don't see the benefits of that. But what are some companies, and I know there's many mentioned in your book, so people can get built to innovate and learn about these. But are there any companies that come to mind, that you use an example that really transform their culture or really turn this around? And I don't want to really pigeonhole you here, but any that have done a really good job at changing the way they managed people?
Yes.
In the people's culture, yes. You both go along. So.
Well, there are quite a number of companies that I feature in the book, and on purpose, I don't only focus on what I call the usual suspects, the high tech companies or the entertainment companies that we know of, but I try to focus on companies and industries that are not necessarily known for innovation, like cement or tire business or pharmaceutical chemicals. So maybe one of them I can highlight just to show you how they managed to create an innovating engine by giving a role to all three layers. So this is an example of Bayer. I think you pronounce Bayer, right? Bayer, the pharmacology and life sciences global company based in Germany. And mind you, this is an interesting example because this is a company that has a long history of scientific achievements and brilliant products delivered by the R&D. But in 2014, they decided to create an innovating engine to leverage the capability of the 100,000 employees they have. So what did they do? First, they made the whole board responsible for innovation. The whole board was responsible and accountable for innovation. Then they selected 80 senior managers from across all country regions and global functions to support the board as innovation ambassadors. And these ambassadors, they spend most of their time with middle managers, explaining why innovation is important, advocating for innovation, sponsoring, training the middle managers in innovation. And then they did something really remarkable. For these middle managers, they created a support infrastructure. They trained and certified 1,000 innovation coaches, which they activated across the whole organization. So this is the role of the middle managers. And then for the front line, they created WeSolve. This is a digital platform where, if you will, any employee within Bayer can post a problem they're struggling with. and invite input or ideas from anyone across the whole organization. Now, what is really interesting is that actually they let me actually visit the platform, the digital platform. At any given time, they have about 200 challenges posted on the channel, and they have already 40,000 people who have participated in WeSolve. Mind you, the platform is in English, and they have only 50,000 people in the whole organization who speak English. But I'll tell you what is the most impressive statistics for me. They showed me out of the best ideas that are offered for the challenges that are posted, 2/3 of the best ideas come from a unit or a function different from where the challenge was generated. And for me, this is a fantastic example of how they got everyone across the organization to participate into the innovating space. So for me, this is a very good example because it's a systematic. They started in 2014 and they went by it very systematically, trained people. So for me, I mentioned it in the book, for people to innovate, they need 3 things. They need to feel that they are able, which means that they need to have permission to innovate. If you don't give them permission, guess what? They won't innovate. I mean, when I say give permission, it has to be sincere. You have to sincerely give them permission to innovate. The second thing they need to feel capable, which means that they need to be, to have the tools, the training, the support, the time to innovate. You have to allocate time and space for them to innovate. Give them the proper training. And thirdly, they need to feel motivated. They need to feel that they have challenges. So you hear a lot about companies who propose challenges, or hackathons. They need to feel that they have a certain autonomy and that they're going to be recognized, that their ideas are wanted. And this creates a motivation to innovate.
Ben, we're coming up close to our break here, and hopefully you can stay just a few minutes longer.
Oh, I'm fine.
We're going to come back for that. This is a fascinating conversation, and I just want to share with you, and Jason and I are co-doing a webinar tomorrow, and we're talking about adaptability, and it was really more building that culture of that. And as you went down here, that you talked about is giving people permission to innovate, feeling capable, motivating others. Within our adaptability quotient, we measure, does company support? Do the people feel that the company has their back? If they suggest something, is it going to be a stupid idea? Are they going to get rejected? Are they going to get penalized? Team support. We talk about the emotional health. How do they feel about that? And then most importantly, it's that psychological safety. It's that having that safe zone to make a suggestion and you're not ridiculed. And it coming from another outside,
I'll have to tell you when we come back from the break how I learned from a Japanese manager how he changed the norms in the company to do exactly what you're talking about. After the break.
Thank you. We just hooked everybody to come back. Hey, you're listening to the Geeks Geezers Googlization Show. Thanks for being part of Googlization Nation. We are talking with Ben Bensaou, author of the new book Built to Innovate. And for all our HR and business leaders, if you just tuned in, you missed a good one. If you've been listening, you're going to want to stay tuned. So we'll be right back in 1 minute.
Change doesn't pick favorites. No matter who you are or where you live, the year 2020 was filled with one unexpected challenge after another. According to the authors of The Adaptation Advantage, we are incredibly well prepared for the past, but woefully unprepared for the future. That leaves millions of people feeling scared, worried, frustrated, and confused. Whether you're the owner of a business or a worker out of a job, adaptability is now an essential skill you need to ride the next wave of normal. The good news is that science shows that adaptability is learnable. Adaptability gives us the confidence and courage to think about change and embrace opportunity in the right way. Adaptability gives us hope for a better future. And goodness knows we need hope. Are you ready to embrace change and double down on your future? Contact Success Performance Solutions today to schedule a consultation about how you can reimagine your team's future, how you can begin to think about opportunity the right way.
Hey, welcome back to Geeks, Geezers, Googlization. I'm here with my co-host, Jason Cochran. I'm Ira Wolfe, and our special guest today is Ben Bensaou, author of the new book, Built to Innovate. Ben, when we left off, we were, one is, I just want to put Roxy, if you can run the banner there for the webinar tomorrow, just so if anybody wants to register, it is free and you can sign up. It's 2 p.m. Eastern time. If you can't make it, it will be recorded. So sign up anyway, and you'll be sure to get the recording there. Ben, when we left off, you prompted a great, you had a good story to tell us about
Yes,
the Japanese manager.
This is a Japanese manager. I think I trained him about 15 years ago in innovation, and then I followed him and tried to understand how he was doing. And he told me about how he was able to transform the culture, the norms in his team, and get people to come to him with a lot of ideas. What he understood, and this is I thought it was very fundamental, and actually I talk about it in all the training and all the coaching I do, is that what he understood is that when people are operating in the execution engine, when they're executing their job, it's very visible. Very often they follow some process or some procedure. In some cases, it's something that their boss can observe. Very often there are even some metrics. So they know that their boss at any time can know whether they're doing their job or correctly or not. But this visibility disappears when you're talking about innovation. You see, I can't come and say, "Oh, Ira, I think you have an idea. You're hiding it from me. You know, you're not telling me." And this is where he realized that when people were coming to see him and say, "Boss," or speak up at a meeting in front of everybody and volunteer an idea, he understood that people were actually taking a risk. And very often people, they choose not to say anything, not to because they're afraid. They're afraid of what other people are going to say. They're afraid of their boss. They're afraid of judgment. So this is the psychological safety you were talking about. So what he understood is that when people came to see him, they were taking a risk. So what they were effectively doing is that they were giving him a gift. And he told me, when people give me a gift, the first thing I say is thank you. And I found this formidable, because when he started to, every time somebody said something about an idea or volunteered something, the first thing he would say is thank you. And that completely changed the behavior around him. And then there's another very interesting thing that he did. Because he disciplined the thinking. You know, you don't need to patronize people. You just give them the mental discipline to be able to evaluate their own ideas. Because he got bombarded with ideas then. You know, he was saying thank you. He got bombarded with ideas, good and bad ones. So what he started to do is to always ask 2 questions, only 2 questions, and always in the same order. So people would come to see him and say, "Boss, I have an idea." Thank you. And he would say, "Can you help me? I'd love to understand why would the customer like this idea?" And people sometimes they come and say, "I don't know." So he would say, "Well, why don't you go and ask a customer?" So that was the first question. And I think it's very fundamental, because he was telling people, first, bring me your ideas, but before you bring me your ideas, think about the customer. And then when came the second question, when people gave him the reason why the customer would be willing to pay for this idea, he would ask the second question, which is, what would be the benefit for the company? Why would we do this? And just with this thank you and these 2 questions, he created a norm, a mindset. And he was telling me, he was even laughing himself. He said after a few months, because people talk to each other, you know, they know the boss always asks these strange questions. So he had people now come to him and say, "Boss, I have a great idea, and the customer is going to like it for this, and this is why we should do it." That's very simple way to create the safety you were talking about, to create the welcome. Please bring me your ideas. and learn to think about your ideas with clarity. Why would the customer like them? Because innovation starts with the customer.
I love that, Ben. I mean, that's like a Yoda wisdom moment right
Yes.
there. Seriously, because I know I get stuck in this too. You know, you can get stuck in a vacuum when it comes to innovation, I'm sure, where you're coming up with ideas, but if it's not through the lens of who you're trying to help and who it's supposed to
Absolutely.
support, and you're not empathizing with them and getting their input, then you can very quickly be off in left field and completely innovate in the wrong way in terms of what the actual design needs to be to solve the problem for the person you're trying to solve it for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was telling you this story as a way that how a manager can, in a very subtle way, just by questions, by his attitude, change the way that his staff are going to behave. But of course, this has to be supported by proper training, and we do have, you know, a set of tools. I mean, some come from design thinking, some come from blue ocean strategy, about how people can actually listen. I mean, for the customer, you know, listen to the customer, and I like to parse it in three. One, they need to learn how to listen to the voice of the customer. What are their dislikes, their pain points? What are their likes? What are their wishes? And for this, it's important for people to learn how to switch from from a tell mode or sell mode to move into a listen mode, very much with a lot of empathy. The second skill people need to learn is how to listen to the silence of the customer, what the customer doesn't tell you. And the customer is not telling you either because they don't know about this desire or this need that they have, or they might know about it, but they don't tell you because they don't think it's your problem to solve. And I can give you an example if you want. And then the third one is to learn, I mean, and Ira knows a lot about that, is how to learn from the non-customers. This is something that very often people underestimate, is how much you can learn from non-customers. And this could be customers who are not your, patronizing your business, but it could be also your suppliers, your customers' customers if you're in B2B, influencers, regulators. I found also can help to innovate. So these are really important. This is what I call the customer comes first in innovation.
Yeah, and again, and we talked a lot about. We've had Charlene Lee. I might have mentioned her. I don't know if you're familiar. She talks about disruption mindset, and her focus is on future customer. I know you talk about the future customer. You know, looking at that, not what the customer bought in the past or what they valued in the past, but what will they value in the future.
Absolutely.
Creates little signs of innovation. You also mentioned, Ben, and we're coming up close to the ends here, and then we have our little bit of a lightning round here. So I want to be able to make sure that we get to that. But one of the things that we also measure in the AQ is motivating style, what motivates people. And you basically covered it, because there are some people that are motivated to play to protect. You play to win. They're willing to take the risks, go out. They're willing to steal second base, but you have to leave first. And there's other people that say, yeah, I want to steal second. I want to get there, but I'm not willing to take my foot off the first base. And they can't possibly get there. So again, you covered so many aspects of what we did without any planning. I mean, this wasn't rehearsed. Yes. So, and really appreciate your insights. We are definitely going to have to get you back another time. Hopefully, we'll try to be a little bit more flexible. We won't do these routinely at 3 a.m. But we really appreciate you being here. Before we get to how people can get in touch with you and so forth, a couple lightning round questions that we have. Number one, if you had to pick one word to describe 2022, what is it?
Hope.
Hope. Thank you. Good word. What's the best advice you ever got but ignored?
Grow up.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Or have a life or get a life or something like that.
Yeah. Favorite podcast?
Favorite?
Yes.
Podcast.
Other than Geeks, Geezers, Googlization, of course. But
Actually, I've just in the middle of another podcast, which is now in 3 parts. I forget what's the name of the podcast, but the host is Aidan McCullen from Ireland. I think it's the Innovation. Do you know it?
it's not John.
No.
There's
Okay.
only
I'm sure
million
people,
of us.
if people are interested, they can look it out. It's Aidan, Aidan McCullen from Ireland. I enjoy it because it's we go through the book chapter by chapter. Almost.
Oh, nice. Yeah. If you share that with us, we'll make sure it's in the show notes and stuff. So you can do that.
Let me type his name here.
Yeah. Well, while we're on the air, you can do that afterwards. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book, business book, you mean?
Yes.
It has to be Blue Ocean Strategy.
Okay. And final question.
Actually, can I have a second also for that?
Oh, absolutely. I always do that. I always have 2 or 3. So
the individualized enterprise. These are actually, I would say, Built to Innovate is built on these 2 books, Blue Ocean Strategy and the Individualized Corporation or Enterprise by Sumantra Ghoshal and Sumantra Ghoshal and Chris Bartlett.
And we'll put both of those in the show notes. Last question. We get you back. It's 12 months from now. It's the beginning of 2023. Hard to believe. What are we going to be talking about?
I'm sure we'll still be talking about innovation, but it's endless topic. But or certainly about you mean in business, and we're not talking about politics,
right?
Okay.
Well, we could be talking politics, but let's try to steer away from politics.
Yes. I'm from Europe, so I'm not going to meddle with you. What's going on there? Yes, I think it's going to be digitalization. Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. So we'll definitely have to have you back. I think it came from Forrester. I just saw there's a webinar or a session next week, and they talked about it. And the first bullet was, now that digital transformation is over, what should we be doing? And
right.
I didn't get the memo that it was over. We'll be curious what they have to say. Ben, it's an absolute pleasure. How can people get a hold of you? How can they get your book?
Well, I think there's a banner with the website for the book is BTI. BTIthebook.com. People can find me also on social media. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We have a YouTube channel with quite a few videos. They can just look for Ben Bensaou, and then I'm sure they'll land somewhere.
Last, anything that we should have asked you that we didn't?
Oh, no. I think we need to continue. We need to have part 2, part 3. I mean, there's so much more to talk about. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And we'd be thrilled to have you back.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Please stay safe. We'll continue to follow you. We'll definitely be in touch. And thanks, and appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for reaching out to me initially and sending me the book, and I'll be talking about it. So hopefully you'll get some more sales.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jason. Ira, Roxy, thank you. And it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. Stay safe. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. And I hope you get a nap in too. Or head back to bed.
Yeah, that was great. It really was unrehearsed. I mean, you talk about the synergy between that, and I was trying to draw some of the connections, and I shared that. And even though I heard Ben, we had a conversation a month ago for about an hour with the class. I even hearing some of what his approach was, I wasn't making some of the connections of how this related to what we're talking about. But I mean, it was one after the other. The synergies. I just love that concept of creating an innovating culture and the difference between innovation and innovating. And we talk about innovation so much, and so do many of our guests. We talk about technology and how we need to become innovators and what people need to do. But the distinction was just phenomenal. I mean, we're talking about lessons learned, what we learned. For you, what did you hear that? What was your aha moment today?
Yeah, that was a big one that you just alluded to, the difference between innovation and innovating. Another one for me, we didn't have time to get into it more today, but he alluded to the importance of cross-functional teams, where, oftentimes the most innovative solution to actually solve the problem within a certain department actually came from a different department that was looking at it from a separate set of lenses. And I just think that's such good wisdom for all of us, not only in our personal lives, but professional lives, and certainly in an organization, that, we can inadvertently get our blinders on when we've been working on a problem for so long. And many times it's getting that outside perspective from someone or a group of other people that have fresh eyes, fresh ideas to the problem, and fresh perspectives that finally unlocks it. And you get that aha moment of how you're actually going to solve it for someone.
Yeah, and again, I think he did mention that is there was that one example that, what was it, 2/3 of the solution or the recommendations that they implemented came from people outside the department.
Right.
So somebody presented an issue, a problem they were having, and 2/3 of the solutions or the suggestions that they pursued were from outside organizations. So that's phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, the list goes on. I got a million notes here, and we'll get these into the show notes, and hopefully people will also get as much information and value from it as we did. But we really thank Ben, especially with a 10-hour difference. I've done that. I've stayed up late and participated, and I've gotten up early, and it's never easy. So really appreciate Ben doing that, and especially with I certainly am passionate about the Blue Ocean strategy. I think it has so much there, and HR really needs to think about how can they become an innovating, how not how they can innovate, but how they should become an innovating culture.
Absolutely. And just one real quick story, and then I know we need to wrap up and talk about the webinar. Sherry Harper, put in a plug for her. She's a friend of the show. She's a chief people officer with a new company, but she used to be chief people officer of Frisch's restaurants, if you've heard of those.
Oh, yeah.
Listeners,
Big boys.
Big boys. Right. Absolutely. Well, whenever the COVID first started, obviously, business just went completely down because they're a restaurant. They fortunately had already built an innovative culture, and they thought, how are we going to continue to survive and thrive through this? Well, they turned each of their locations into basically a convenience store. So you could pull up into the drive-through and get toilet paper. You could get hand sanitizer, sanitizing wipes. So if they weren't going to have customers inside eating food, then they were going to use it basically as a warehouse. So people could zip through and order those things. And so, just in terms of folks thinking, well, how can we be innovative? We're a restaurant. Everybody can innovate, like Ben said.
Yeah, brilliant. There's so many other things, and my mind's racing with other ideas, but we're almost out of time. We're going to get pulled off the air soon. You're listening to Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. I want to thank you, Jason, for being here. It's been great. We've got an incredible lineup coming up, and some big news about us joining the People Forward network. You'll see some new logos, some new impressions, some different guests, some different style of present interviews that we're going to have. We want to thank everybody for being part of Googlization Nation. And one final reminder, tomorrow, Thursday, January 20th, is it the 20th? Yeah, the 20th, 2 p.m. Eastern time, we will be, Jason and I will be doing our webinar about Reimagine Your Future. There is the link, rebrand.ly/reimagine 2022. That's rebrand.ly/reimagine 2022. Or you can just go to the website for Success Performance Solutions, and right at the top, there's a button. You can register there. If you're connected with us on LinkedIn, you'll see it there. So lots of ways that you can participate. If you can't be there at 2:00, please register anyway, because there'll be a recording and you'll get that afterwards. Yeah, and we want to thank you. We'll be continuing this conversation tomorrow at the Reimagine Tomorrow, and every week on Geeks, Geezers, Googlization. Thank you for being part of it. Thank you for listening. Please share. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and we'd love to have a review or two up on any of the podcasts. My exit. Don't let the shift hit your plans.